There is a painting in the Hermitage Museum that almost no one stops to see. It shows a man in his middle years, dressed carefully, looking slightly past the viewer. His name was Sultan Ibrahim I. He ruled the Ottoman Empire for 8 years. He died because he believed something that made perfect sense at the time. In 1640, the palace in Constantinople operated under a system everyone understood. The Sultan's mother controlled access. His advisors filtered information. His military commanders presented options in careful language. This was not corruption. This was structure. Ibrahim had spent 22 years locked in a single room. His brother Murad IV kept him there. Murad suspected everyone. He executed 3 of his own brothers before they could threaten him. Ibrahim survived only because Murad needed one male heir alive. When Murad died suddenly at 28, Ibrahim walked out of that room into absolute power. He was 35 years old. He had never commanded anyone. He had never made a decision that mattered. The empire he inherited stretched from Budapest to Baghdad. It controlled Mediterranean trade routes. It maintained armies across 3 continents. But something had shifted during those decades Ibrahim spent in confinement. The Janissary Corps, once the Sultan's personal force, now chose which campaigns to fight. Provincial governors delayed tax collection until they received private assurances. European diplomats learned to approach the Grand Vizier first, the Sultan second. This was not rebellion. This was adjustment. The system had learned to function around an unstable center. Ibrahim's mother, Kozum Sultan, had survived 4 reigns. She understood how information moved through the palace. She knew which commanders respected tradition and which ones respected only force. She tried to manage what Ibrahim saw. She filtered reports. She softened language. She believed she was protecting him. And for the first 3 years, it worked. Ibrahim signed what was placed before him. He attended ceremonies. He did not ask questions that had no good answers. But isolation does something to judgment. Ibrahim began to suspect the very people who were trying to stabilize his rule. He thought his mother was limiting him. He thought his advisors were mocking him behind closed doors. He was not entirely wrong. But he also could not distinguish between restraint and conspiracy. In 1644, he dismissed his Grand Vizier without warning. He promoted a favorite who had no military experience. The Janissaries watched this carefully. They did not protest. They simply stopped responding to orders they considered foolish. The warning came in 1645. The Knights of Malta attacked an Ottoman convoy near Crete. They seized a ship carrying pilgrims returning from Mecca. Some of those pilgrims were connected to the palace. This was not an act of war. This was piracy that broke a standing truce. Ibrahim's military council recommended a limited response. Send a fleet. Blockade Malta's ports. Negotiate return of the hostages. The knights would yield. They always did. This was the advice of men who had managed Mediterranean conflicts for decades. Ibrahim saw something else. He saw humiliation. He saw weakness that others would exploit. He decided the Ottoman Empire would invade Crete and remove the Venetian Republic from the eastern Mediterranean entirely. His advisors explained the cost. Crete was fortified. Venice had alliances. A full invasion would take years and drain the treasury. Ibrahim did not believe them. He thought they were exaggerating to maintain their own importance. He ordered the invasion. The fleet sailed in 1645. What followed was not a quick campaign. Venetian fortresses held. Reinforcements arrived from Italy. The Ottoman army captured coastal cities but could not take the interior. Soldiers died not from battle but from disease and supply failure. Every year, Ibrahim sent more men and more money. The Janissaries went because they were paid. But they began to speak openly about waste. In Constantinople, bread prices rose. Tax collectors became more aggressive. People noticed. Ibrahim did not notice. He had stopped attending council meetings where criticism might surface. He spent his time in the palace gardens. He promoted men who praised his decisions and dismissed those who brought problems. His mother tried to intervene again. She arranged for senior commanders to speak with him directly. Ibrahim accused her of plotting against him. He confined her to her own quarters. This was the moment the system broke. Sultan had relationships the young Sultan did not understand. She had corresponded with provincial governors for decades. She had negotiated with foreign ambassadors when Ibrahim's predecessors were distracted by war. When she was confined, those governors stopped sending accurate reports. Ambassadors stopped attending palace functions. The Janissaries began meeting privately with the Grand Vizier, discussing a problem no one wanted to name. The war in Crete continued. By 1648, it had cost more than any campaign in living memory. The Venetian Republic was also suffering, but it had allies sending money and ships. The Ottoman Empire had only Ibrahim's insistence that victory was near. His advisors began presenting him with falsified reports. They told him cities had fallen that were still under siege. They inflated enemy casualties. They did this because accurate information made him angry. And angry sultans were dangerous. Ibrahim believed the false reports. He celebrated victories that had not happened. He planned a triumphal entry into a capital he did not control. The Janissaries decided the problem was not policy. The problem was the man. In August 1648, a delegation approached the Grand Vizier in private. They carried a petition signed by senior commanders. It did not request a change in strategy. It requested a change in Sultan. This was not unprecedented. Ottoman history included sultans who were removed when they became incapable of rule. But it was always dangerous. The military had to move unanimously. The religious authorities had to provide justification. The sultan's family had to cooperate. Sultan was still confined. The delegation reached her through intermediaries. They asked if she would support Ibrahim's removal. She had protected him for 8 years. She had managed his worst impulses. She had tried to teach him what his confinement had prevented him from learning. But she also remembered what instability did to empires. She remembered the civil wars of the previous century. She gave her consent. Ibrahim would be removed. His 7-year-old son would become Sultan. She would manage the transition. On August 8, 1648, the Janissaries entered the palace before dawn. Ibrahim was in his private chambers. He did not resist. He asked what he had done wrong. No one answered him directly. He was taken to a different room. His son was brought before the council. The religious authorities declared Ibrahim unfit to rule. His son became Sultan Mehmed IV. Ibrahim was confined to the same apartments where he had spent his early life. He lived there for 10 more days. Then the council decided he was still a threat. On August 18th, he was strangled with a bowstring, the traditional method reserved for deposed sultans. The war in Crete continued for another 21 years. Venice finally surrendered the island in 1669. After the longest siege in history, the cost bankrupted both empires. The Knights of Malta, who had triggered the entire conflict, were never punished. The hostages they seized in 1645 were quietly ransomed within months of the invasion's start. None of this would have happened if Ibrahim had accepted the limited response his advisors recommended. But Ibrahim had spent 22 years powerless. When he finally held authority, he could not separate confidence from certainty. He could not distinguish between advisors managing him and advisors betraying him. He believed his mother's caution was control. He believed his commander's hesitation was cowardice. He believed the warnings everyone saw were exaggerations meant to limit him. And because he believed these things, he made choices that felt like strength but functioned as self-destruction. History remembers him as Ibrahim the Mad. This is not quite accurate. He was not delusional. He was not irrational by his own logic. He simply did not understand that power without judgment produces the same result as weakness. His advisors knew this. His mother knew this. The Janissaries knew this. They all tried to manage him. They tried to work around him. They tried to protect him from decisions he was not equipped to make. But eventually, the structure that had supported him decided he was more dangerous than his absence. The painting in the hermitage shows him before the invasion, before the confinement, before the delegation at dawn. He looks confident. He looks like someone who has finally stopped being afraid. There is no indication in that painting of what is coming. There is no sign that he has already ignored the one warning that would have saved him. He looks, more than anything, like a man who has just started to believe he understands how the world works.